river and into town. They avoid places with names like Foster's Freeze, A&W's, Smiley's, but swim close to the track at homes on Wright Avenue, where sometimes, in the early morning hours, you can hear them trying doorknobs or bumping against cable TV lines. We wait up for them. We leave our back windows open and call out when we hear a splash. Mornings are a disappointment. Raymond Carver.
First time in the fall of '9. See, that's when the humpies run on the off year. And on the Little River, they were so thick in there, the horse wouldn't go across. You had to walk on them. They had to back the horse across to get them to go. But you gotta stop to think. All the rivers were that way.
We were told, that the salmon was, belonged to us. It was given to us by our maker, and for us to, get along. And so it's part of our culture. And it's sad that we're, losing the salmon the way it's going, because that was our way of life.
As the American frontier moved west, the Olympic Peninsula was one of the final regions to be explored. On the Elwha and across the peninsula, from Hoko to Point No Point, the Clallam people had lived in a series of villages. During the 19th century, European diseases decimated the Clallam. Conquest of their lands dislocated the survivors. The 1890s found many Clallam living on the beaches of the new white settlement of Port Angeles, landless and poor. Disparities of opportunity and means separated whites and Indians.
There's some people in Native American country who say that each Native American peoples have their mother watershed. And for us, that was the Elwha. She was our sustainer of life.
Seattle and Port Townsend were both ideal places for an ambitious young man to stake out a claim. Free land, timber, water, promise was everywhere. But these towns were not the frontier anymore. I wanted something newer. When I got off the George E. Star in Port Angeles that day in 1890, I saw Port Angeles was a wild frontier town. If I was looking for undeveloped country, I'd certainly found it. It took me only a few minutes to walk from one end of Port Angeles to the other. I turned from the muddy streets to the few frame houses and cabins, the stores, the saloon, and the opera house. Between 200 and 300 Indians were camping on the beach in front of the town. Most of them had large canoes, The Indians made their living principally by fishing.
Thomas Aldwell. Thomas Aldwell was an enterprising young banker from Ontario, Canada, who arrived in Port Angeles seeking his fortune. He would make his living principally by selling real estate.
Oh, yes. I knew him in later years when I was growing up. I was a member of the Rotary Club. He wasn't very big, but he was pretty feisty. And so one time, my office was right across the street from his office on Laurel Street. He had a big brother. His brother was about 6 feet and weighed a couple 100 pounds. I looked out the window and they were over there fighting. The big guy was on the floor. Little Tom was right on top, hammering away at him. It was quite a show.
The West sounded easy. Land of opportunity, plenty of everything, generosity, friendliness. A man's own worth, not his ancestors'. These were catchphrases that we all believed. History proved them true.
Shortly after arriving in Port Angeles, and in the midst of a local housing boom, Aldwell obtained a homestead on the Elwha River. A young man, he was smitten with the beauty of the spot.
When I saw Steve's second claim, I knew it was just what I wanted. Below the cabin was a canyon through which the Elwha thundered. And 75 feet or so in front of it was a spring of crystal clear water overhung by vine maples. The scintillating rays of the sun were coming through the branches and sparkling on the water. My life had taken me to schools, to cities, to business, but suddenly that spring embodied all of life and beauty I thought I'd ever want.
4 years later, Aldwell met Mr. R.M. Brain, who was a friend of the manager of the Federal Bank where Aldwell had worked as a teller in Canada. It didn't take long before Aldwell's infatuation would yield to a new seduction.
Well, I knew him. My dad knew him extremely well, but I knew him. God, he sold some real estate and stuff, but he was one that was behind getting most every industry here. And he was also indirectly helping himself, see?
In 1894, when I met R.M. Brain, he was interested in a power site, and I showed him my claim on the Elwha River. But we didn't talk only about the past. We looked at the canyon. Suddenly, the Elwha was no longer a wild stream crashing down to the strait. The Elwha was peace, power, and civilization.